this is why I've been intently looking at Twitter the past 10 minutes, is because I actually just got posted on I got a take of mine posted by Old Takes Exposed,
Uh-oh.
and
Uh-oh.
I said that Penn State would.
Well, long time no see, and welcome back to another episode of I Don't Know. And today I'm joined by Kyle Andrews. Kyle is a sports reporter for the Center Daily Times, and he's been a writer, reporter, and podcast for like a million other organizations. He's a former collegiate football player, a Baltimore native, and most impressive, a cancer survivor. Kyle, thank you so much for joining me.
How's everything going? I'm also glad to be here too, and I it's funny because I had, when it came to dealing with all this stuff, when it came to dealing with the Hodgkins and being able to overcome that, everybody's been very supportive. I guess that's not funny, but I've enjoyed the fact that I've been able to have a second chance of just being able to do things the way that I like to do them. So I've appreciated that support from everybody. I've appreciated my doctors for helping me out with my health, and I'm here today because of it. So very grateful for that.
Well, it's fantastic. We don't have to get into too much detail if you don't want to, but can you just kind of,
I could talk a lot about it.
hey, well, if you want, just give a brief explanation of just kind of your
I
story
can go all day.
with this battle.
So when I was this was only 2 years ago. It was June 26, 2020. I mean, not 2020, 2019, when I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. And I actually, I'll never forget the couple of weeks and the weeks ahead of that. I had a little bit of pain in my neck. I had swelling on the left side of my neck, and I didn't know anything of it. I thought because I went to the gym quite a bit, I lifted a lot, that maybe I hurt my neck doing that. So went to the doctor. I was he told me to go get an MRI. He was like, "Well, it feels like you might have pinched something, and you have some serious swelling." And then come to find out, I had lymphoma. So they found that out. It was traces that it could possibly be lymphoma. And then they figured out on June 26, 2020, I mean 2019, like I said before, um, that's I had Hodgkin's lymphoma. So luckily for me, they found it at stage 2. They removed I guess I had a tumor that was in my right armpit as well. They removed that. And then I started chemotherapy probably a couple weeks later in July. I finished chemotherapy in January. When was it? January 20th. Of 2020. So right before the pandemic started, I finished chemotherapy. So yeah.
What kind of perspective has that really given you on just on your outlook of life, kind of going through something like that?
Just the fact that you can't take anything for granted, even the small things, just because you know this is the thing. Like, a lot of people say, yes, cancer is a life-threatening illness. I mean, my cancer, based off of everything that we knew about it, wasn't necessarily. I mean, it was still life-threatening, but it's like one of those things where you're gonna live. Um, However, things could always change. You never know, but it just makes you realize that you know you shouldn't take the small things for granted. Like, I mean, my health isn't 100%, and I don't think it ever will be back to the point that it was prior to going through chemotherapy. And that's something that I do miss. The fact that, like, I can't feel everything in my fingertips sometimes. Hot and cold sensations, I can't feel them as much. So sometimes I'm out in in the summer and I'm wearing a hoodie because I feel cold, or I'm out in the winter wearing you know, actually the winter actually bothers me a lot more. I get super cold during the winter, but you know, it's a really odd situation. You know, it's something that I don't feel like a lot of people necessarily understand going into it. That's how you're gonna feel. And the thing is, it's like, you know, it's like rolling the dice. You know, I mean, you never know what you're gonna get with you know, your own treatment, because I have I had Hodgkin's lymphoma, and you know, with my treatment it could be totally different than someone like James Conner, who actually had the same kind of cancer, same staging and everything. And he's back in the NFL playing at a high level. But you know, for me it took a little bit more of a toll on me. And then, not to mention that, like literally a year later, after I got chemotherapy, after I finished, you know, I had COVID in January 2021. So, like, I mean, earlier this year, I had COVID. So that also was an added, you know, problem too when
Complication.
it came to my health.
Geez, well, I'm glad you got over that and you're doing okay now.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I had to deal with both things, and you know, luckily now, I hopefully after being vaccinated, I don't have to worry about that. But you know, that's just a number of things that I've had to deal with over the past couple of years. And as I can only assure everyone, that's only half the battle. Those two things just with my health, you know, dealing with everybody else's health, and seeing the things that other people have had to go through. That's been pretty rough too. And you know, that's something that I'm pretty open about for sure. I just, you know, I think people need to hear both sides of it and understand that, like, you know, you don't have to, it's okay to be open about things too. I mean, as long as, like, you know, it's always an audience or something when it comes to things like that. People need to hear this, you know, but it's also okay to not talk about it. And I think you have two sides to it. You have people that don't want to talk about, you know, health struggles. I totally understand that. And you have people that do want to talk about it, like me. So I mean, either way, I think everyone, by all means, you know, we do. I mean, some people's stories have helped me. Some people's quiet confidence has helped me. So, you know, I do appreciate both ends of it.
I think you sharing your story can maybe help someone who is in a similar boat and doesn't know how to feel about it, and knowing that you can put it out there and they can feel comfortable to do the same or to not, but they can know that it's okay to express it how you feel you should.
Right.
And so I didn't know, realize that the temperature thing, that you kind of feel colder. That's something I didn't know was an effect. Um, Moving to State College was a bold choice then.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it was interesting. So I mean, I used to work at the Baltimore Sun. I guess, you know, we dealt with cold in Maryland too. You know, that's one thing that I think a lot of people from further up north, to me, I consider Maryland a northern state. I know some people are like, oh, Maryland's not the north, but culturally, absolutely. At
Mm-hmm.
least the part that I was from. You don't hear any southern accents around here, or around there anyway. But you know, Baltimore is I mean, during the summer it could get pretty. I mean, during the winter it could get pretty cold. During the summer it gets pretty hot. You know, weather-wise, there was so many fluctuations that I'm just like, oh my goodness, man. Like, how am I, health-wise, I'm like, how do you deal with all the fluctuations in weather? You know, it's not as consistent. And I know some people. One thing I will say is that when I moved up here, I had a lot of people that were like, well, the cold's gonna, you know, be tough, but you know, I'm prepared for it. That's the difference. You know, being in Maryland, some days it could be 60 degrees and the next day it's 20.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you know, in State College, I haven't necessarily had to deal with the same thing. It hasn't been that bad, not yet anyway. But I know that that first day of 48 degrees kind of hit me,
Took
and
you
it
by
was out of nowhere.
really surprised.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah, what sucks about State College is there's just the winter seems to be like from November to April. It's just like an extra. It's you really have like 2 or 3 good, nice weather months of the year there. Otherwise, it's relatively chilly the whole time.
yeah. And I'm noticed that, and It's interesting. I mean, the weather's colder, but I actually appreciate it. So, um, makes me feel better.
Yeah, and outside of the weather, so how has your first year with CDT and in-state college been?
It's been going pretty well. I've enjoyed it a lot, and you know, it's been one of those things where I'm just incredibly excited at the fact that you know being at state college, being at a place that cares so much about college athletics, especially football. I mean, that's awesome to me, and it's just it's really cool to just see how the community cares about sports up here. Think some well, especially college athletics. I think sometimes when you go to when I was in Maryland, college sports, unless it was a Maryland basketball team, sometimes took a back seat, and it wasn't necessarily on the people that covered it or fans in general. I won't even blame them. It was just more or less because you had the NFL or you had NBA not that far away, 45 minutes away from Baltimore. You had the Wizards,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have NHL down there. You have multiple baseball teams in the area. So with all and multiple NFL teams. So because of all of that, people care a little bit less about college athletics than they would in a place like, State College where
Because here
you
it's every
are. Yeah, exactly. Like I mean, it's almost like Penn State is almost like the third NFL team in Pennsylvania, right?
it is absolutely. There's a crazy statistic, which I'm sure you've probably heard at this point, but I think it's amazing. Every game day weekend, State College is the third biggest city in the state. So, today on a Wednesday, it's not, but like on a game day, it's the only, cities more popular are Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. It's a little absurd.
Yeah, and I mean, the infrastructure is funny about State College doesn't necessarily support that many people coming to the area, but
Not
they
really.
make it work. Yeah, they make it work somehow. Traffic wise is horrible
Oh my God.
sometimes with those days because you have two lanes and then you have Atherton, as many of you all know, and that gets clogged up pretty badly.
And
College Ave gets super
Atherton's been
clogged.
under construction since like the 1800s, I think, and it will be forever.
That's how I feel. It's funny in Maryland we have well in the Baltimore area we have 695 and Atherton feels really similar to 695 in the sense that it's been under construction since like forever. 695 was under construction from it was funny. We actually it's finally done, but of course it's done once I leave.
Oh, of course.
that that's the funniest thing. It had been under construction since my sophomore year of high school, and that was 2009. That was the beginning of my sophomore year of high school. So for 12 years, it's been under construction, and I'm just like, man, they finally got it done.
Yeah, see, I have a theory about Atherton that none of the construction's done to improve the road at all. It's just to screw with people. I swear they've done construction and like the road has gotten bumpier after they were done. Like it's gotten worse. I don't know what they do there.
Yeah, that's what I've heard from a lot of people.
It's yeah, that's frustrating. But what else like in terms of either athletics or just the campus, the town, what has kind of surprised you about the area?
Um, just the amount of people that you know, have have been just I mean, not only the athletics, but just with some of the other things that they do. It's just a really pretty area, I think that's something that people don't take into account. Um, this area is wildly, wildly like just beautiful. I'm looking out outside of my window right now and I see all the fall foliage. I see the mountains in the background. And I mean, it's just a really beautiful area. The air is really clean. I mean, people are super nice when Penn State's not losing. But yeah, I mean,
Have you been there
it's
before
awesome.
until you moved up here?
Yes, I'd been there a couple of times. So my girlfriend's actually an alum.
Okay.
So yeah, I've been here for a couple of times.
And is it ever anywhere you thought you would be or you wanted to know you to work in or it just kind of happened?
Yeah, so it just happened, It was something that I had looked into coming to a place where I could cover college athletics, and you know I was like, well, what better place than the Center Daily Times, because of me also understanding um the area and how much you know people would support it. I mean, people really love sports around here, and that's something that made a lot of sense to me, just in terms of coverage. And it's a lot of other good things too. I mean, you have ice hockey. I think ice hockey here is so huge, and that's something. I mean, I've been in the Pagula a couple of times, and I love it. That's a beautiful arena. I've been skating
Oh,
in
it's
there
rocking.
a couple times.
Pagula is amazing, and the story of Penn State hockey is fantastic. That they were a club team however many years ago, and now they're this Big Ten contender every year. It's kind of fascinating.
Yeah, and I mean, not only that, but the fact that they're having a Frozen Four here too. I
Mhm.
mean, that's crazy. Like the Frozen, it's gonna be the women's Frozen Four at Pagula. But I'm excited for that. I mean, I can't imagine how hype it's gonna get, only because that stadium. I mean, we all know from being at Pagula that that arena rocks. And it's close. Everything's so close to the ice. It's one of the coolest arenas I've ever been to for hockey.
It's definitely a really cool environment. Well, speaking of arenas, how does being in Pagula or being in the press box at Beaver Stadium, how does that compare to working with the grounds crew at Camden Yards? What are the differences there?
So that was being in the press box at you know, being at the press box at Camden Yards is one of the, I think a lot of people take it for granted how beautiful and how cool like Camden Yards is, just based off of the fact that you have the warehouse. And I think over time too, like if you don't take into account the fact that we we're talking about a situation where Camden Yards had nothing, like it was nothing behind that stadium. You had
Mm-hmm.
no hotel behind the stadium. You had nothing kind of obstructing the view. But once the Hilton Hotel was built, that kind of obstructed the view of the area. And so like after that, when PNC was built, everyone was like, well, PNC is the best park in America, which I think now view wise, yes, it is. Just because they built that you know they built that new arena. I mean, they built that new stadium, and they have no obstructive view.
Mm-hmm.
So still, with that being said, that's Camden Yards is an awesome stadium. But coming to Pagula, coming to I look at Beaver Stadium. That's a crazy view, from the press box at least. Even going to Medlar Field. I mean, Medlar is really cool because you could see the mountains in the background.
Yeah.
It's one of the best views in minor league baseball, in my opinion. So I mean, it's just cool coming from that experience to come into a whole new experience where you have that cool stadium view. It doesn't necessarily feel like some of the other places that I've been. Like when I went to Nats Park, this is no offense to Nats fans, but Nats Park felt like a copycat of felt like a not as good copycat of Citizens Bank Ballpark. And I'm not just saying that because
Wow.
I know
I'm a
I know
Phillies
you
fan, so
want.
I love that. So continue.
I'm not just saying that because you're a Phillies fan, but it felt like a carbon copy. You had the blue seats, you had the open air concourse. Um, it's just it was outstanding. I mean, I've never seen the fact that, like, I mean, Citizens Bank has the view and they have the open air concourse. With Washington, with the Nationals, it's just open air concourse.
Huh.
The view's okay.
Yeah, I've never
You
been
don't
to
see much
the
of the field.
National Stadium. I do think, I mean, obviously I'm biased, but I think Citizens Bank Park is like an underrated ballpark just in terms of atmosphere and view, especially when on a good sunset, you got the skyline like in the background. Like I think it's up there. PNC, I've never been to a game, but I know PNC is probably the most beautiful, but it deserves some credit.
Yeah, PNC is, you know, one of the best. I mean, they're definitely one of the best, if not the best. And then I would also say, Coors Field too out there in Colorado. Yeah,
That's probably
that's the one. Coors Field is, I mean, outstanding. I've never been to it, but some of the views that I've seen from my friends that have gone to it, it looks pretty awesome.
yeah, it's definitely a bucket list stadium. I'm going to pivot here real quick to get into well, the topic that has frustrated me and probably thousands of others across Penn State Nation. Um, just describe to me first what was the energy you felt after last week's game in State College?
It just felt like the wind was taken out of the sails of everyone around the area. The fans, the team, the coaches. I also see that this is why I've been intently looking at Twitter the past 10 minutes, is because I actually just got posted on I got a take of mine posted by Old Takes Exposed.
Uh
And
oh.
I said that Penn State would destroy Illinois. And now I'm on Old Takes Exposed, and because of our producer on our podcast, and yeah, it's not looking too great.
Yeah, that's
It's
not a
like,
good look for the brand, but it's you know what? You're not wrong for thinking that. That's like the logical thing based on the season they've had that should have happened, right?
yeah, that's what I thought.
And
I
so,
mean,
from what did you see from watching the press box, but also just from watching this team, from preseason on? Like, what led to this loss? Why did this happen?
I think the fact that so let's take into account this one thing. I think Sean Clifford getting banged up in the Illinois game, I mean, the Iowa game prior, even they didn't give him enough time to recover. And I think that,
Did not look right.
yeah, if you put in a quarterback that can't run, and that's one of the biggest and best things that he's done, that's going to put him in a really tough situation. It's just, it's tough. You can't play. I don't think you could play well when you're banged up and your ribs are hurt. And they're saying that you know he can come out there and play. And I mean, the other thing too is James Franklin saying that a 50% Sean Clifford is the best quarterback on the roster. It gives them the best chance to win, which is, I mean, he said Sean Clifford gave him the best chance to win, which I disagreed with, because it's no way that if Taquan Roberson or Christian Veyu, if one of the two of them didn't come in there, that they couldn't have just game managed the entire situation and just thrown slant routes all day, because the slant was open 24/7. I mean,
Yeah.
it was it, if you have Jahan Dotson, anything is available. And then Parker Washington's outstanding in his own right. And then Keandre Lambert Smith, also a very good receiver. So, I mean, that just hurts for them. And honestly, we were talking about before the Iowa game. I picked Penn State to lose that game, but it was because I thought Iowa's defense was going to be better. They ended up losing that game because they were injured. And I think a fully healthy a Penn State that has PJ Mustipher at defensive tackle,
Loss.
a Penn State that has Sean Clifford at quarterback, I mean, that's completely healthy. I think that's a totally different situation for them. And I think that we wouldn't be looking at, possibly being 5-3 after this next game against Ohio State.
Yeah, well, and you kind of got into it, but so obviously when Taquan came in against Iowa, he just was overwhelmed, to say the least. It wasn't his best game. From your time watching the team, is there a clear difference in that quarterback room from starter to backup, or was that just not his best showing?
That was, I mean, he was the problem with Taquan Roberson in that specific situation for Iowa was because of, he wasn't set up. He wasn't prepared to succeed. He just wasn't. A majority of the reps, the starting reps, don't go to him. and I think that they haven't necessarily done the greatest of job of preparing their backup to go in, except if, situations where the starter is not playing great, which we saw last year. Will Levis came in and, he played fine, you know. I mean, I think that was another thing. I think if I'll also say this, I think if Will Levis was here this year, they would have won that game in flying colors. I
Absolutely,
think that
without a
they would have,
doubt.
yeah. I mean, both games, honestly. I think, you know, if Will Levis was with Penn State, if he was on their roster this year, Penn State wins both of those games by multiple touchdowns. I mean, that's just a fact. And honestly, they could even consider if Will Levis was there as well. I think even this next game too isn't it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility that they would start him for this game too. So even if Sean Clifford was playing as well as he did and he went down, Will Levis comes in and he fixes. I mean, he would fix a lot of the problems that were in there.
Yeah, and so in my experience as a fan, it seems there's kind of the way their seasons play out seems to be pretty similar. Is that Penn State, they'll get a couple of big wins, they'll get some top 10 rankings, things look good, and then they might lose a tough one on the road, and then they drop a game that they just should not lose, like they did to Illinois. That's something I've noticed in the past few years. As someone who's unbiased, you're not a Penn State graduate, you're here reporting. Is this something? Is this kind of, I wouldn't call it a collapse, but dip, something that you in the back of your head saw coming?
No, I didn't see it coming at all. I mean, I thought Penn State was going to be in a better situation, just health wise. I mean, well, you can never. That's the other thing too. You can never predict health. Um, so I just that's hard to predict. I just didn't think this is how it would happen. I thought if anything at the end of the season with Ohio State and playing against Michigan and playing against running the gauntlet of those teams, I thought that was probably the hardest bit to kind of deal with. But it's just not ideal. I mean, the injury situation is not ideal, and yeah, I mean that's the biggest thing I think.
And how does this team rebound with that gauntlet still coming up against the other tough Big Ten teams? What do they need to do to kind of regroup and find a way to maybe get to a Big Ten championship?
Well, I mean, honestly, if I'm them, you know, I know they're going to they're definitely going to a bowl game this season. And if they want to go all in on trying to go and win a bowl game or go to a better bowl game, because they're not going to a New Year's Six bowl either. That's another thing. We have to take that out of the equation right
That's
now.
gone.
That's
That's
that's gone too.
yeah,
Um,
not a
and
chance.
I think the only way that could have happened was that if they won, and I think if they had went 10-6, I mean, well, 10-2, they would have been able to go, but it's definitely not happening. Um, and I think the only way that you can do it, I mean, Sean Clifford looked like he was hurt worse than he was in that Iowa game. Honestly, I mean, he winced so much, and I think at this point you got to start Roberson or Vayu. I mean, of course, they don't want to do that against Ohio State, but I mean, their posturing is saying that he's healthy,
Yeah, I mean, well, obviously
100%. And
hindsight's 2020, but I would have assumed that they were going to start Roberson or what's it, Bayu? Is that how you pronounce it?
yes, Vayu.
Bayu. I would assume one of them were going to start for the Illinois game because it seemed like such a lock. Give them a week to rest. They'll play Ohio State. That seemed. I feel like now they put themselves in a tough spot because he played another game, still clearly hurt. This is one of the next three biggest games of the season. They can't not play him unless he's physically unable to. They kind of shot themselves in the foot here.
I totally agree. I mean, I think if you had kept in, you know, kept them going with Roberson, I think they would have been, or Bayu, I think they would have been in a better situation, even just at least for this game. Maybe not the Iowa game, but if you salvage one game and then get some hope back. And then Clifford's a little bit more healthy for this upcoming Ohio State game. Maybe you have something going there, but I did not expect the performance that I saw against Illinois. That was just not who I thought they were.
And he clearly, and it sucks. He clearly wasn't himself. He was hurt. Part of his, offensive game is that he is dual threat, or at the very least, a mobile quarterback, and he was immobile. And you don't,
Yeah.
In any other game, if he's healthy, if you play 9 overtimes, there's going to be some designed runs with Clifford. Clearly, he was hurt. They couldn't rely on that, and that's why they kind of stagnated on offense. And it's a shame, but I guess you got to adjust to the injuries you're given. So it seems like they didn't do that.
Yeah, I mean, you can't fold up the way that they did, especially offensively. I think offensively it was not there. And the thing is, you have to make a change. You absolutely have to make a change.
You have to. Well,
And
they
didn't make that.
They're going to have to make a change soon. I'm going to ask you for the score prediction in a second, but just generally, how do you think they fare now against Ohio State at the Horseshoe?
35-10 Ohio State. That's what I think.
Wow, you're giving it right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just going to rip the Band-Aid off. I think it's 35-10 Ohio State. I just don't think it's not going to be a good situation for them. I just don't think so.
Well, so kind of explain why, because even though they had all these offensive woes, they have been a top 5 defensive team all year, and they do have some playmakers. Why 35-10? That seems not unrealistic, but slightly drastic, I would say.
So I think that the offense, I mean, if you look at it, was something cool that, well, I guess it's not cool for Penn State fans because it's not great for Penn State fans, but
I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, Penn State. So it's an account called Penn State Analytics on Twitter. They actually posted this stat, and I want to cite them. So Penn State has a yards per possession of 30.1. Ohio State has one of 56.7. Points per 10 possessions, 50 points. 21.4 for Penn State. Offensive effectiveness, 71.1 for Ohio State, 26.3 for Penn State. Yards per possession allowed. Defense, Ohio State allows 31 yards. Penn State allows 26.9. We all know Penn State's defense is outstanding, and they only allow 11.6 points per 10 possessions. And same thing with defensive effectiveness, 13 is their defensive effectiveness. So Penn State has a better defense, but this Ohio State offense is just something special, and right now, based off of, his pick was actually 41-23. And I felt like I was a little bit more, I was a little less generous with the offense. He was a little bit more generous with their offense than I was. And, he was a little less generous with the defense, but I just think that Penn State, their offense will put them in a position where, the field position will be significantly better on the defensive. For the offense of Ohio State. And we all know Ohio State's offense can run it up on people. So,
yeah,
I just would not be surprised by that development.
Well, you jumped the gun a little bit on the score, but we're gonna have you run it back. Do you have those glasses I was asking you for?
I do not. I did not have any glasses, unfortunately.
Oh no. All right. Well, I'll wear them for you. I have a theory that people are more trusted if they have glasses on. So I'm gonna reiterate your score. I got my glasses here. Kyle Andrews says Ohio State's gonna dominate and win 35-10 against Ohio State, and you can trust me because I got glasses on. That's the score he's giving. I agree with you. I think they'll maybe get one more score, like a 35-17.
Yeah, I could see that too.
If it's only a field goal. It all depends on the health of Clifford. I could also see him playing a quarter or two, taking a big hit and going out, which we've seen that before, but that could definitely happen. Well, I'm not really looking forward to this game. My energy for the season is definitely kind of taking a gut punch, but I am a fan and I will be watching, and I do appreciate all the work you've been doing. If you don't follow Kyle on Twitter already, give him a follow. He's fantastic, and he gives you plenty of good Penn State football and just athletics updates and information. Kyle, I really appreciate you coming on with me today.
Oh no, I appreciate it, Noah. And as always, I'm grateful to be on anyone's show. I mean, I've appreciated the amount of support everybody's given me. That means a lot to me. So thank you.
Of course. We'll have a good one. Best of luck. Are you traveling to Ohio State?
I'm actually staying home this weekend, but I will be there for Maryland next week because it's homecoming for me,
Exactly. It's
but not
homecoming.
actual homecoming. Yeah. I'm not a Maryland alum. I actually went to University of Baltimore, but yeah.
The DMV.
It's
Yeah.
It's a funny thing about that. People in Baltimore, we consider Baltimore to not be part of the DMV. And I know that sounds crazy to people because they're like, aren't you guys in Maryland too? And I'm like, the thing is about Baltimore is that it's its own thing. And people in the DMV consider the media areas around DC, Maryland, and Virginia to be the DMV. So funny story.
Yeah.
It's weird. We're the only one. I mean, people from the outside kind of see it differently, but I guess us and people from Baltimore and people from DC kind of see it the same way.
Interesting. I didn't know that. Well, not DMV, Baltimore. Either way, same general area, somewhat of a homecoming.
Yeah, not too far away.
I'm sure
45 minutes away.
Yeah. All right. Well, best of luck, Kyle. I really appreciate it.